But right now, the key is to make sure that the public is following instructions. For those of you who still need additional information about how to respond, you can go to ready.gov, that's ready.gov. And that website should provide you with all the information that your family needs in terms of how you can prepare for this storm. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all the people who are potentially affected. We are extraordinarily grateful for our first responders. Because they're going to be working 24/7 around the clock, non-stop. And I want to make sure that our thoughts and prayers go out to all those who may end up be dealing with a very difficult situation over the next several days. Last point I'll make, though this is going to be a big storm. It's going to be a difficult storm. The great thing about America is when we go through tough times, like this, we all pull together. We look out for our friends. We look out for our neighbors. And we said, aside whatever issues we may have otherwise, to make sure that we respond appropriately and with swiftness. And that's exactly what I anticipate is going to happen here. So I want to thank all the federal teams, state and local teams that are in place. I'm confident that we're ready. But I think the public needs to prepare. For the fact that this is going to take a long time for us to clean up. The good news is we will clean up and we will get through this. Question: what about the impact on the election, sir? President Obama, I am not worried at this point about the impact on the election. I'm worried about the impact on families, and I'm worried about the impact on our first responders. I'm worried about the impact on our economy and on transportation. The election will take care of itself next week. Right now, our number one priority is to make sure that we are saving lives. That our search and rescue teams are going to be in place, that people are going to get the food, the water. The shelter that they need in case of emergency, and that we respond as quickly as possible to get the economy back on track. Thank you, everybody. Barack Obama. Address at the American Red Cross on Hurricane Sandy. Delivered October 30, 2012, Washington, D. C. All right. First of all, I want to thank Gail and Charlie who are on the scene doing work every time we have a disaster here in the United States of America. But obviously, the Red Cross is doing outstanding work internationally. So we want to thank them for their outstanding work. A few things that I want to emphasize to the public at the top. This storm is not yet over. We've gotten briefings from the National Hurricane Center. It is still moving north. There are still communities that could be affected. And so I want to emphasize there are still risks of flooding. There are still risks of down power lines, risks of high winds. And so it is very important for the public to continue to monitor the situation in your local community. Listen to your state and local officials, follow instructions. The more you follow instructions, the easier it is for our first responders. To make sure that they are dealing with true emergency situations. So the better prepared individual families are for the situation. The easier it is going to be for us to deal with it. Next, obviously, I want to talk about the extraordinary hardship that we've seen over the last 48 hours. Our thoughts and prayers go out to all the families who have lost loved ones. Unfortunately, there have been fatalities as a consequence of Hurricane Sandy. And it's not clear that we've counted up all the fatalities at this point. And obviously, this is something that is heartbreaking for the entire nation. And we certainly feel profoundly for all the families whose lives have been upended and are going to. Be going through some very tough times over the next several days and perhaps several weeks and months. The most important message I have for them is that America is with you. We are standing behind you, and we are going to do everything we can to help you get back on your feet. Earlier today I had a conversation with the governors and many of the mayors in the affected areas. Including Governor Christie, Governor Cuomo, and Mayor Bloomberg. I want to praise them for the extraordinary work that they have done. Sadly, we are getting more experience with these kinds of big impact storms along the East Coast. And the preparation shows. Were it not for the outstanding work that they and their teams have already done and will continue to do in the affected regions, we could have seen more deaths and more property damage. So they have done extraordinary work working around the clock. The coordination between the state, local, and federal governments has been outstanding. Obviously, we're now moving into the recovery phase in a lot of the most severely affected areas. New Jersey, New York in particular have been pounded by the storm. Connecticut. Has taken a big hit. Because of some of the work that had been done ahead of time. We've been able to get over 1,000 FEMA officials in place, pre-positioned. We've been able to get supplies, food, medicine, water. Emergency generators to ensure that hospitals and law enforcement offices are able to stay up and running as they are out there responding. We are going to continue to push as hard as we can to make sure that power is up throughout the region. And obviously, this is mostly a local responsibility, and the private utilities are going to have to lean forward. But we are doing everything we can to provide them additional. Resources so that we can expedite getting power up and running in many of these communities. There are places like Newark, New Jersey, for example. Where you've got 80–90% of the people without power. We can't have a situation where that lasts for days on end. And so my instructions to the federal agency has been, do not figure out why we can't do something. I want you to figure out how we do something. I want you to cut through red tape. I want you to cut through bureaucracy. There's no excuse for inaction at this point. I want every agency to lean forward and to make sure that we are getting the resources where they need. Where they're needed as quickly as possible. So I want to repeat my message to the federal government: no bureaucracy, no red tape. Get resources where they're needed as fast as possible, as hard as possible, and for the duration. Because the recovery process obviously in a place like New Jersey is going to take a significant amount of time. The recovery process in a lower Manhattan is going to take a lot of time. And part of what we're trying to do here is also to see where are some resources that can be brought to bear that maybe traditionally are not used in these kind of disaster situations. For example, there may be military assets that allow us to help move equipment to ensure that pumping and getting the flooding out of New York subway systems can proceed more quickly. There may be resources that we can bring to bear to help some of the private utilities get their personnel. And their equipment in place more swiftly so that we can get power up and running as soon as possible. So my message to the governors and the mayors and, through them, to the communities that have been hit so hard is that we are going to do everything we can to get resources to you and make sure that any unmet need that is identified, we are responding to it as quickly as possible. And I told the mayors and the governors if they're getting no for an answer somewhere in the federal government, they can call me personally at the White House. Now, obviously, the state, local, federal response is important, but what we do as a community. What we do as neighbors and as fellow citizens is equally important. So a couple of things that I want the public to know they can do. First of all, because our local law enforcement, our first responders are being swamped. To the extent that everybody can be out there looking out for their neighbors, especially older folks, I think that's really important. If you've got a neighbor nearby, you're not sure how they're handling a power outage, flooding. etc., go over, visit them, knock on their door, make sure that they're doing okay. That can make a big difference. The public can be the eyes and ears in terms of identifying unmet needs. Second thing, the reason we're here is because the Red Cross knows what it's doing when it comes to emergency response. And so for people all across the country who have not been affected, now is the time to show the kind of generosity that makes America the greatest nation on earth. And a good place to express that generosity is by contributing to the Red Cross. Obviously, you can go on their website. The Red Cross knows what they're doing. They're in close contact with federal, state, and local officials. They will make sure that we get the resources to those families as swiftly as possible. And again, I want to thank everybody here who is doing such a great job when it comes to the disaster response.